want to introduce first of all, I'm going to say a friend, Dr. Victor McCrary. We started a relationship years ago when he was at Morgan State University. I'm going to read just a little bit about his background. One of the things that I want to say is that he and I started several years ago a STEM Expo at Morgan State. And I never forget when he first came to Morgan State, and some of you are familiar with our STEM Expo. I broached that topic with him, and you know what he said? He said, let's do it. And that really impressed me. And that STEM Expo to this day has grown, but it all started with a conversation with Victor. And I want to say that I'm very much appreciative of that. Victor McCrary, he's the Vice President for Research at the University of District of Columbia, where he champions the growth, development, direction, and oversees university's research enterprise. He is a change agent and serial innovator responsible for developing comprehensive, sustainable research strategies, fostering transdisciplinary research, and expanding research programs via engagement with federal and state agencies and private entities. Dr. McCrary has also authored a number of technical papers. In October 2016, Dr. McCrary was appointed by President Barack Obama to serve on the National Science Board, which oversees the National Science Foundation. He chaired a task force that recently produced the report, The Skilled Technical Working, Crafting America's Science and Engineering Enterprise. In May 2020, he was selected as the vice chair of the National Science Board. On May 4th, 2022, Dr. McCrary was reappointed by President Joe Biden to a 6-year term on the National Science Board. I want you to give him an applause for his work over the years, and we welcome him, Dr. Victor McCrary.
So I think you all can hear me, and I want to thank you, Kevin, Michelle, Janelle, and all the folks here from the University of Arizona. But I want to thank all of you all. Let me ask you, how many people are from around here from Baltimore, Washington area? Raise your hand. So most of these folks are local, okay? And even though Kevin, read my bio, I don't want you to be put off because I want you to first know one thing before I get into quantum. I was born in the District of Columbia here. I was born in Northeast DC at Walter Reed Hospital. My mom and dad were both in the Army. Dad passed when I was 8 years old. He had a heart attack. My mom had to raise 3 kids. We lived on the other side of town, other side of the tracks. In fact, where I work at UDC, when I was much younger, you couldn't go to that side of town because it was segregated, okay? And so the reason I say that is, despite you can Google and read my bio, I'm just like you. I'm an ordinary guy who just grew up in the hood, okay? And my mom put a lot of emphasis on education and learning new things, okay? So I just want you to just realize, whatever your dream is, young men, young women, you look in that mirror today, you can achieve that, okay? Where I grew up, 3/4 of the males are either dead, locked up, or strung out, all right? And if you're from Baltimore or some of the other areas, you know and you see these things all the time. But this is not a talk about being discouraged. It's about being encouraged. So I am proudly honored to say that a month ago, I turned 67 years old. In 1958, I was 3 years old. Like I told you, my parents were both in the Army. So I want to tell you something. If you ever think about the military, it's a great option because they learned a lot. They came from humble beginnings. My mom was a Black woman from Philadelphia, was a nurse. She was a first lieutenant. in the Army. She went, during the Korean crisis. My father was a white man from Texas, okay? And they met at the Fort Clayton in the Canal Zone, and they were, they fell in love, all right? In fact, she outranked him. He was a master sergeant, okay? So let's hear it for the women, all right? And, but it's 1958, 3 years old. You don't understand much, but all of a sudden, there was a lot of talk in the living room. And then, of course, you listen to Walter Cronkite on TV. Now, I don't know if you all, some of you probably were not around at that time, but can anybody guess what happened in 1958? It got everybody worried about something, because it's going to lead to what we're talking about in quantum. Sputnik. Who said that again? Who said that? Say that again.
Sputnik.
Sputnik. Does everybody know what Sputnik was?
It was the first satellite put in space by the Russians.
By the-
Man-made satellite.
That's right. So here we are. We are the United States of America. We have come out of World War II. We have come out of the Korean thing. We are on top. And all of a sudden, there's a satellite beacon going around the Earth that the Russians had put up. Oh my God! People were like, worried, what's gonna happen? We're behind, wow, what are we gonna do next? Okay? So I happen to be in DC public schools here. And the federal government, through the National Defense Education Authorization Act, don't worry about memorizing that, put hundreds of millions of dollars in the public schools across the nation, because we were worried that the Russians were coming, all right? In fact, we had library books, because we didn't have phones and those e-books like you have now. We got all sorts of books, science books. We got chemistry sets and science sets to build things. So my father, when I was 6 years old, we built a crystal radio set, which probably, if you looked at that now, it's probably in the Smithsonian right across the way here. But that got me into it. Now, I didn't know anything about dipole oscillations or the science, but boy, we loved building it. And I was able to tune into my favorite radio station here in DC. We got even language teachers. We had to learn Spanish, because at that time, the United States was worried about, you heard about the Cuban Missile Crisis, you read in history, and we were worried about the Russians were going to take over the Western Hemisphere. So we had to be bilingual, okay? So, I mean, all of this great things. And then it was the race to space, and then if you remember your history, President Kennedy said, we will be the first to put a man on the moon. And we did. All right. And so that was Sputnik 1. So next slide, please. So you think about quantum literacy, which is why you all are here today. It involves a lot of things. And a question of mine says, how many people saw Black Panther? All right. Wakanda is now. It's here. And you could be the next Black Panther. You could be the next Black Panther. You too could be the next Black Panther. Okay? That's right. Because quantum is a new area, just like us going in space, that involves many disciplines. Involves data science. You've heard that word a lot, which means nothing about, it's just fancy. How do you manipulate data? All of you all, when I came along, the first calculator cost $105 when I went to college. It was Texas Instruments. All it could do was addition, multiplication, and division. Okay? And probably now they give them away for free if you go somewhere. It involves understanding physics. Okay, so when I went to graduate school, I had to learn quantum mechanics, but it's not that hard, because when you learn what quantum physics is, it's the same as classical physics. You talk about things like probability instead of uncertainty. So it involves statistics. Okay, if you think about it, you do this every day. You flip a coin. What's the probability it's going to be heads? What's going to be tails? If your parents, like my aunt used to do, she always played the lottery. Okay, what's the probability of her winning? It's all about probabilities. 1 in 100,000, 1 in a million. Okay, so that's what also quantum involves. okay? But all about probability. It involves duality. There are things you can do at the same time, okay? It involves that probability is uncertainty, okay? So you'll hear some fancy thing like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, but that's not what I'm going to talk to you about, okay? But it talks about being able to do all of those things. It involves cybersecurity, which all of you have heard about. People trying to break into our systems. How do we do that? Because if you could build a quantum computer, you can not only encrypt it, but the person who has the first one will be able to break any system that we currently have. So it is a national priority. And there is a race, not only in the United States, but across the world, but who can build one who can have more than 100 qubits, you'll hear that word a lot, you know, that are stable, okay? So if we go to the next slide, you are learning about quantum as we speak. Some of you all, like, what grade are you in, young man? And the fact that you're here probably tells me that you're pretty smart, okay? Because I didn't get exposed to this type of stuff in ninth grade, so that means you have a high IQ. Now, where do you go to school at? Where at? In Maryland. So one of the things is, I'm sure your mom and dad are saying, now we got to get to college and get some more education, because also quantum involves math. It involves algebra. Eventually, it's going to involve things like calculus, but it's going to involve statistics. But it's also going to involve being able to use normal programs. I mean, for example, some of you all use Microsoft Office. You use a spreadsheet. It's called Excel. Okay, being able to calculate numbers and put them back and forth. Now, one of the things as I put down is at our community college, at the University District of Columbia, so I have to be here and be a commercial, okay, which is right here. We are the nation's capital, only public land grant HBCU in the District of Columbia. We have a community college all the way up to a law school, but we are the first community college, thanks to our partners at Morgan. We are working to be, we will start next year offering a curriculum in quantum information systems. Because how many people here last name is Rockefeller? I didn't see any hands here. Okay. So what that tells me is the reason that you're probably going to go to school is not because you can sit with your grandfather at the hunting lodge and look at your degree, but you're going to go to school. Why do you want to go to college? To learn more, okay? And why do you want to go to college, young man?
To ensure that I have the best future I possibly can.
That's good. And how about you, young man?
So I get a good job.
Get a good job. That's why you want to go to college these days. Because you want to get a good job, whether it's a 2-year school, 4-year, or just a certificate. You want to go get a job. Because see, my last name's McCrary. When my mom raised me, my last name's not Rockefeller. We don't have any oil, okay? Not in Northeast DC. Okay, so I had to go to school so I can learn some skills so that people can hire. And what we're teaching is because we want the citizens here within the District of Columbia and other people. By the way, we do have a DMV rate. So if you live outside of Maryland and everything, you don't have to pay the out-of-state rate. To get those skills so you can work, for example, at Amazon, who's building an innovation center down here in Potomac Yards, okay? Or you could work for the Department of Homeland Security here, or you could work for Northrop Grumman. I'm just saying here, but it's not just here in Washington, it's going to be across the country, all right? These jobs are going to be there. You already know, you probably know people who work in IT. Those jobs right now are paying a lot of good money. And by the way, you don't even, in some cases, don't need a college degree. Start out about $80,000 or $90,000. So the next slide. So Sputnik 1. We're now at a Sputnik 2 moment, okay? We are in deep foreign competition with the People's Republic of China. And this is nothing against Chinese people or anything. We're talking about the government, okay? They are working very hard in quantum and artificial intelligence, which includes machine learning and deep learning, okay? And so the United States government has passed the bill. It was first called the USICA bill, and right now it's in what they call the Bipartisan Innovation Act. which is going to provide money to universities and schools like yours, and universities working with those schools, those secondary schools, to get people interested in STEM, particularly in areas of like artificial intelligence. There's what they call the 5 industries of tomorrow: quantum information systems, artificial intelligence, 5G, advanced manufacturing, and biotechnology. And if you think about quantum, it actually underlies all of those, okay? So how many people here have heard of sickle cell anemia? It is something that affects particularly the African-American population. Now, actually, my last biology class was 9th grade, okay? So, but sickle cell anemia is as an offput from the fact that most Black folks, African Americans, are type O blood. And the reason they're type O blood was because that's an evolution from Africa in a response to malaria, okay? So that people can overcome malaria. But what happens is you have a thing there where the cells start to sickle and you have an issue. Did you have a question, young man?
No, I'm very proud of myself that I knew that sickle cell anemia gives resistance to malaria.
That's right. You are good.
I
That's
knew that.
good. That's good. Learning, everybody here. So that means also what we're going to do is working with a lot of minority serving institutions, Hispanic serving institutions, and HBCUs. Extremely important. That's why what you're learning here today, quantum, is just like when back in 1958, when we were worried about outer space and what we could do, I got into science, okay? I got into chemistry. Because not only would I get a job, but right now it was the hot thing to learn, and it was great opportunity, and Uncle Sam wanted me, okay? Next slide. And you can see right now, if you read that graph, in the past 20 years, we've lost our R&D lead. We're still somewhat the leader, but you know, right now, we've lost the lead to other countries in terms of science and technology. And that has a big impact on our way of life, because eventually, you know, I don't think all of you, I mean, when I went in college, I worked at a bar and a grill to pay for school, but you don't want to do that for the rest of your life, okay? You want to be part of an economy that's growing and thriving. And part of that is being leaders in science and engineering. So the next slide. And so this is where you all make the difference. This is called the missing million slide. Because if you think about it, in science and engineering, the country is not representative in terms of population parity of where we should be. And by the way, I'll give you all these slides. So, you know, in fact, they're on the computer, so you can take them.
Thank you.
That shows that, you know, we're almost at parity in terms of gender parity, but definitely in terms of Black, Brown, and Native Americans, we're not there in STEM. And actually, this was the same way the country was when I came along in 1958. All right. When I grew up here in the city, tons, you know, used to call it Chocolate City, tons of Black folks were working in the naval laboratories and the government labs here, working as chemists and engineers and technicians and good paying jobs. And I'm telling you right now, we need to get, you all are the future. You all are the future. All right. And you have great opportunities. And I would tell you, talk to your career counselors, your parents, or the folks here, because in quantum and these other areas, it's extremely important. So if we go to the next slide, and you can see, you know, what it looks like, the demography in terms of science and engineering, okay? In terms of population and how we look. So we got a long way to go. And let me tell you now, there are universities, there are government agencies, there are companies who are looking for people who look like you, who can bring the talent. And my job at 67 years old is to pass on to you the secrets and the advice that you need. So your name is Iodor. I want to read about you, Tim. I know I am. It's going to be a good thing. I want to be reading about you because you might be the first one or help break that code in quantum information systems. Same thing with you, young man. What's your name?
Terrence.
Terrence. I expect to be reading about you. You too. I expect to be reading about you. And young lady, I know I'm going to be reading about you because I just saw when you walked in here, you just came up and said, you know, I'm going to make it. But you got to know where to go, where the opportunities are. So the next slide, please. So as Dr. Peters had said, my good friend Kevin, I was very blessed when I got a call in 2016. It was from the White House. And I didn't know, and they said, is your name Victor McCrary? Of course, when you grow up in DC and you encounter the criminal justice system, when someone calls you and asks you, is your name Victor McCrary from the White House? You say, okay, yeah, what do you want? And they said, well, the president would like to consider you to be on the National Science Board. And I said, wow. And then the next thing they said is, can we check your tax records and do your criminal background check? I said, okay. But I was honored that President Obama put me on the board in 2016. And then I got reappointed by President Biden. So I've been very blessed. And my purpose also for being here is to share those blessings with you, because I have made my road. Now it's for me to help you get where you're going. And one of them that we have identified is developing STEM talent for America. When I came along was the same reason I went into science, and we need it now, is we need to hit everybody. Because quite frankly, you know, we in a tussle with China. And, you know, in China, they got their issues too, but they don't have the same issues we have, in the sense that Admiral Lawrence Selby, who is the chief of naval research currently, has said, our greatest weapon against anybody in the world is our diversity. We just have to figure out how to use it. And if we can figure out how to use it by getting you all coming out to things like that and getting these teachers, I believe you said you're a teacher, an educator, you're a coach, you know, cheerleader, you have to do all of that stuff, right? Is what we need, particularly for those folks who are in the public school systems. So the next slide is we even put together a panel of MSIs to sit down and have students who look like you and leaders to talk about why it's important and why we want you there. Because I don't want you coming to my school just because you look the way you look in the mirror. I want you to come because I know you got this up in your head. And I know you can help the country. Same thing for you, young man. Same thing for you, young lady. And for all these young men who are sitting on this front row. And so I would like you to start thinking about whether it's the University of Arizona or Morgan State or University of District of Columbia or whatever your institution, about one, going into STEM, because that's going to be important for the jobs in quantum information sciences. You need to have a basis in algebra, calculus. You need to understand some fundamental physics, biology. You even have to understand sociology, because this computation will be used to solve healthcare problems, because it's much faster than any Dell laptop that you have right now. Next slide, please. So I'm going to tell you just about UDC. This is not a little bit of a commercial, but just to think about when you think about any school you want to. So what we do here, we are the District of Columbia's research laboratory. We look at problems everywhere from how do we decrease the number of rodents that are in the city? How do we worry about the purity of the water in the Potomac that the people drink here? Okay, how do we get young men and young women like you into careers in quantum and other STEM careers where they can go get good paying jobs? So the next slide. And we have 6 schools. So we have everything from workforce development. You can come right now and you go to National Airport. Some of you, if you know the area, we have a hangar there. We have one of the few HBCUs that have an aviation maintenance program. I can take a young man like any of you or a young woman like you who don't know the difference between a flathead screwdriver and a Phillips head screwdriver. And after 2 years, you will get an FAA certificate and you can walk across the tarmac and work for Southwest starting at $75,000. Now, let me tell you why that's nice. I'm sure all of you all have heard about the cost of college. Okay, your mom and dad probably tell you get good grades so you get scholarships, but even that may not cover. But what's nice about that story is, let me see, I picked on you already. So your name Roger, right? So Roger comes and gets this certificate, start at $75,000. And he works for about 4 or 5 years And then Kevin comes up to him or Janelle and says, you know what, you've been working pretty good. I like your work ethic. You show up to work on time. You do good work. I'm going to send you back to get your bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. And by the way, I'll pay for it. So Roger now gets another certificate, which is a bachelor's, which he doesn't incur debt. And then a couple of years later, you know, Jennifer back there says, hey, Roger, I don't need you working on a tarmac. I need you working in the back room, you know, in the business part. I'll send you back for some business courses or maybe your MBA. Because I now want you to run the business. All right. And again, I'll pay for it. And so one of the things you learn, because I'm sure when I was your age, my parents gave me an allowance. They only gave me like $1 a week. Okay. So that was enough to buy potato chips, soda, whatever I needed to do. But debt is debt. You want to make sure you don't have any bills. So if you think about it, it's also a lifelong trajectory of not only, as somebody said, you want to be able to do the things you want to do, but education builds options for you in your life. And so we have a school of engineering, arts, law school, all of that. Next slide. And I just wanted to say, if you think about some of you going into engineering, if you think about an HBCU or University of Arizona, go to one that's an A-BET accredited. There's 15 A-BET accredited HBCUs. Morgan State is one of them in Baltimore. Next slide. And I just want to say, if you come, you can have some fun. Like at UDC, we have four big research centers. We're doing stuff with NASA, NSF. We're actually making parts for satellites and things like that. We're also doing a lot of stuff, next slide, where we are right now, Professor Laura Thompson is working. We work with folks who have had strokes or who are getting elderly like myself and have a little problem walking, how to work with that. And so she actually uses computer vision and motion sensors. Like if anybody have ever seen that movie Avatar, that's what she does. In fact, I'm proud to say, just a month ago, she was awarded the Alan T. Waterman Award by the National Science Foundation. The first time an HBCU has gotten that award in the 46-year history of the award. So, hey, we have fun. We do some science. Next slide. And then if you hit that, hit the button again, I think this is a build, you can come learn cybersecurity, which is a really good, important part of quantum information systems. Because one of the things that people are talking about quantum systems, because there was a guy, if you want to look this up on your phone, his name was Peter Shor. Shor's algorithms show that if you can use quantum computing, then what you'll be able to do is you could break the RSA encryption, which is what most of the systems are using now that you have that you look at. I don't know if any of you do Venmo, or for example, your parents may pay, you see them pay their bills online once a month. All of those systems are protected by RSA encryption. But if somebody gets a quantum computer first, they can break that. So the next slide. And you know why you should also think about going in quantum and going into science? Because you can get in QIS. Most places don't offer a degree in quantum information systems. They'll offer something like in physics or chemistry or computer science. But you can get exposed, you can invent that way. So we got a first patent. And then we've got professors who've been honored. So I see this young woman back here. You could be the next woman of color. This award comes every year, nationally recognized. This is Dr. Dixon, next slide. And then Dr. Talesa Dikisa. Again, people who look like you every year. There's 10 or 15,000 people converge on Washington. This conference goes back 40 years, the Black Engineer Year of the Year, the BEA Conference, okay? And we recognize faculty members. But you know what's also nice about this conference? So think about it, because you're locally, because you could get in and it's free. You could come to this conference next February and talk with people and start building relationships. Talk to people as scientists, you know, and say, hey, look, I'm interested in getting in STEM. I want to be the person who invents the quantum computer that breaks the code. You can meet folks and talk to folks about where your next career in college should be. Next slide. And then this is Dr. Thompson, who I told you made history, okay? And this just happened a month ago. And again, doing these type of things, you can see there are people who look like you who are doing things that are outstanding. My hero, because I'm a chemist, is a guy named Percy Julian. He was actually on a US postage stamp. He is a fellow of the National Academies. Okay. He was at Howard University. He's one of America's most prolific chemists that ever came out. Okay, as you know, we're talking about chemistry. Okay, he had over 129 patents, and he started his own company. How many of you all want to start your own business at some point? He started his own company. So there are people who, Black and brown people, way back when, who were getting awards, starting companies, making a difference. And you can make a difference now because we are in this Sputnik 2 moment. Next slide, please. And then that's just her and the provost at this ceremony. So I expect in about 10, 15 years, if I'm still around, to see one of you up there, okay? You believe you can be up on that stage? Sure. We'll work on it, okay? We're gonna work on that confidence. Because you can be up there, all right? And each one of you, I know you're gonna be up there. Because I can see the determination in your eyes. So you're gonna make it happen. You're gonna be up there too. Oh, yes, you are.
That requires public speaking. I don't do that.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I don't do it either. I'm not very good, as you can tell. I'm very shy, but I learned over time. Okay, so we can make that happen. Next slide, please. And so, one of the things about what you're doing today, and hopefully going to the university again, I want to thank University of Arizona, Morgan State University for having me here, but also really having you here because you are the future. Okay, is you want to be a force for good in the world. It's not about collecting cash. Now, like UDC, I mean, how many people like the movies? I'm a big movie buff. Anybody a movie buff here? All right. Now I'm going to tell you about a movie you probably don't know about, but if you get a chance, you can get it on Netflix or Comcast free. It's called It's a Wonderful Life. All right. And it's about a guy named George Bailey, who works with his father and everybody called Bailey Brothers Building and Loan. And what they do is they give loans to people who can't get loans anywhere else. Okay. And there was another side of town, the bad guy was Mr. Potter, and and those people lived in the slums. But the Bailey brothers didn't have much money, but they would take a chance on you, even though you didn't have a job. Or you know, let's say you were a waiter or something, but they gave you because they knew by building a home and giving you that loan would help you build the wealth that you needed, but also made you stable and helped your family. So that, if you think of that, the University of the District of Columbia is the Bailey Brothers Building and Loan. We take students from anywhere. We take students that some people say, oh, well, you can't get into Harvard or Princeton, but we'll take. And I'm George Bailey. I'm the one that fights the system every day to open the doors for you. Okay, he's my hero, okay? And so I'm asking you all, you know, when you today to take advantage of this opportunity because the country needs you, because we are in this crisis right now, the Sputnik 2 moment. We need young women and men like you to step up. And I didn't say it was going to be easy. Trust me. I can show you my report cards from public school. I should have bought one down here. They weren't all A's. They weren't all B's. And there might have been a few C's, okay? But you have to be persistent. And hopefully, one thing you do today, because I saw network activity, is get to know each other. Because no one makes it alone. You need help from everybody here. You need to build those relationships. You need to ask those questions that like, hey, I got a C on my algebra test. Can I still go into science? Yeah, you can. All right. Or, well, I don't know the first thing about physics. They don't teach that at my high school, but I want to be a scientist. Can I be one? Yes, you can. And just remember one final thing. Who first appointed me to the science board? Do you remember? Who's that? Say that again. He was the first Black president. I remember when I grew up, parents and uncles on the weekend, they get around the picnic table or something and have a few drinks and eat. And they say, oh boy, you know, it'll be a lifetime before we ever see a Black president. But it happened. And if he can become president of the United States and serve the way him and Michelle did and make a difference, there's no excuse for any of you all. None. Because that load has been taken off your shoulder. Now, yes, I didn't say the system was unfair. In a lot of cases, it's rigged. But for everybody in this room, yes, we can. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time. Oh, go ahead. By the way, I'm gonna pass these out. These are just what we do because we have a farm there too. So just some information on UDC.
When are you planning on retiring? You're not planning on retiring, are you?
No, I will tell you why. And I think it's a good question why you asked. So I started a movement called Health 100, or excuse me, Live 100. And I was on a radio show recently where I do believe every person can live to be 100 years old. All right? And this is to answer your question. Now you say, well, why is that? Why do you want to do that? Well, first of all, I'm having too much fun. But second is with medical technology and with what we know today, there's no reason anybody can't live 100. Now you got to work at it. And that starts even for you. You might say, well, you know, I'm young. I'm not 67. But it really involves just diet, exercise, okay, developing, monitoring your health, and having a sense of purpose, okay?
Because I always say, if you like what you're doing, why stop doing it by
And I'm
retiring?
not. And so I have friends of mine who have retired. And then all of a sudden they say, well, Vic, could you know, can I help you out at the university or find something? Because you can only play so many rounds of golf in 6 months, right? And then you get bored. I plan, if by the grace of God and my health, they let me stay at UDC, I plan to do that through 75 or 80 years old. In fact, at our institution, the guy who was the founding dean of engineering, who graduated more Black engineers than anybody in the history of higher education, Eugene Deloach, was there to 82. And he was healthy because he was having fun. And I have fun what I'm doing. Because you know what I do? My mother told me, and my dad, I told you, they were an interracial couple. My dad had to come home on the weekends because we couldn't live on the base because he was stationed in Virginia because they had miscegenation laws. Okay, so he would come to Washington, they lived here. But they told me, and my aunts, when I grew up, they said, you're gonna be the one. You're gonna infiltrate the top to bring the doors open. So my job is to teach you all how to play the game. In fact, that's a course I taught at Wharton for the past 14 years. How to play the game. How do you get to the top? Because if tomorrow Bill Gates, who you all know, let's say he wrote a check for scholarships for all the Black and brown students, it wouldn't be a hill of beans if there weren't people who looked like Dr. Peters, or we had women like Janelle who were at the top, who control the levers of power and resources. So my job is to make the next Vic McCrary's or Victoria McCrary's so you can get appointed to the National Science Board by the future president. Or you can be the CEO, okay? Or you are in these different parts of government. I have a nickname that a lot of my Latino friends call me, El Padrino, which is the Godfather, okay? Because that's what I do. I run an organization to get people in. I have folks around so that, you know, we see some promising person. And what's your name, young lady?
Ebony.
That's right, Ebony, I remember. And we see Ebony come along and say, you know what? I think Ebony would be good as an executive director. Let's get her. Because I can tell you, you're just as smart as any of these other people out here. Do not be fooled. It's just, they know and they know somebody, okay? All right, so my job is to make sure to take the blessings I have and so that you can know somebody that can get you in, whether it's in higher education, whether it's government, or whether it's industry.
Great. Let's give him another hand. playing this with Michelle. We've been thinking about a keynote speaker. And Dr. McCrary came to my mind immediately because I know he could bring it, he could deliver. And I want you to know that we were born the same year, but he's older than me. But you know, I want to thank him again for his time, taking the time out of his busy schedule. You know, sometimes administrators get so busy that they don't take time for the little people, for the young people. So we really appreciate him taking the time out of his schedule to come here to talk to you. Anyone who is not here or didn't show up, they missed something. Would you all agree to that? Okay, let's give them another one.
If you ask, I'm gonna tell you something before I get off, and I have some more. So one thing is to share. You call me, you talk about college. I don't care if you don't want to come to UDC, but give you one young, hand that to that young man behind you. You come and talk to me. Well, I mean, you come and email me. What I'm gonna do is, and I got two more, so I got one for you. Because it's important to reach out and ask. Okay, like I told you in the beginning, the only person that can stop you from achieving your dreams is the person in the mirror. It's very easy to say, well, let me blame it on the man or this person or whatever. No, reach out, okay, and be persistent. You know, if the email doesn't come back the first time, send another. Pick it up, call folks, because that's how you're going to get out here and be able to navigate in this world. Thank you, Dr. Peters.
Thank you.
And thank you, University of Arizona. I appreciate it. Keep going.